Hello, it's Pibble Pusher, and today we're going to be talking about dungeon tiles. So, this set of dungeon tiles is your basic stone to wood build, and they were my first ever piece of terrain. I love them to pieces, but they do suffer from your usual dungeon tile problem of when they get jostled, they all move. It can ruin a build very easily. It can knock over delicate terrain. It's just not ideal. The internet at large has solved this problem with magnetic dungeon tiles, which is what we'll be building today. On top of the magnets, I also wanted to add something a bit special to these. I wanted them to not just be gray stone, just to make it a little bit more interesting and special. And I wanted to add a lot of texture that could either be rough terrain or they could be imagined as cave walls to create more organic looking tunnels and interesting shapes. Without further ado, let's get started. This build is made from 1/2 inch XPS foam, and I used my Proxon to cut them 3x3. I should have been a little bit more precise in this process, but I was having a bad mental health day, so they're a smidge wonky. Do forgive me. I decided to do 25 tiles total, so I could do a 5x5 grid. And after cutting the basic shape, it was time to add said grid. I love my cutting mat for this. It has the inches all marked out on it, so you simply line it up in the middle of a 3x3 section of your mat, mark out the 1 inch pieces. I use an X-Acto knife for this, and then draw across your piece with a ruler and your knife to make that basic grid. I then like to go over my grid with a ballpoint pen to bevel the edges and deepen the look of the grid itself. I find this just adds a more natural, organic looking effect to the final piece. Next, it was time to do some texturing. I used the tried and true balled up tinfoil method, making sure to push really hard so I could give it a lot of character. This is also a great time to add any cracks you want to give it for character, any beveling at the edges, anywhere. This is really the best time to do that. In order to get the rough organic effect I wanted on my tiles, I went over in random shapes with white glue and then used a paintbrush to fill each square that I wanted with glue while making sure it didn't go in any squares that I didn't want rough. I followed this up with some construction sand and some craft pebbles from the dollar store to really pile on that effect, and I made them quite thick. Once that was done, I went over with spray Mod Podge and really saturated the pieces that I wanted to be tall and thick with sand so that they would stay in place until I got to the Mod Podge layer. Each of your tiles is going to have one magnet on it, on the left-hand side under the 1 inch mark where your grid lines are. Over 25 tiles at one magnet per side, that's 100 little magnets, so make sure you buy enough the first time, because I know I didn't. Twist your piece so that you know your placement is about central, both horizontally and vertically, and then press the end of your magnets into the foam to make an indent about the size and shape that you want. Once that was done, I got a hobby knife and cut a little dent into the piece. I really wanted to make sure that the magnetic side, the clingy side, was facing outwards each time. So I stuck the magnets to my scalpel to make sure that that was the case, and then slid them into the hole with some white glue to make sure it stayed. Then I used the butt end of my scalpel to really press them in to make sure they were fairly deep. And that was it. Now you just have to do it 100 times. But of course our magnets need something to cling to, so I went out and got 100 1/2 inch flathead screws. These can be literally just get a screwdriver and screw them into the foam, and you want them on the right-hand side in line with the 1 inch mark on the right. So you should have your magnet on the left and your screw on the right, and if you do that for every side of every tile, they should fit and snap together. Ideally, you have them nicely centered, but don't worry too much if they're not. It still seems to work just fine for me, and I know a bunch of mine are off-center. Now we're onto the fun part, the black Mod Podge layer. This was probably my least favorite part of the whole project, just because with how thick I'd put the sand, the Mod Podge really wanted to clump. But I'm happy with the end result, and I think it was worth the struggle. Once the Mod Podge held everything in place, I gave a darker gray layer as my base. Even though I wasn't doing a gray paint job on these, I just wanted sort of that natural earthy tone and a bit of darkness to help kind of ground the whole piece. I've been wanting to experiment with more colorful builds lately. I was just getting tired of the same old gray stone, gray stone, gray stone. So I went with a red rock look for this, which fits in nicely with the setting of my current campaign. After the first layer of dark red, I hit it with a dry brush of pumpkin orange and then a warm white to kind of try to bring up those accents and make things pop. I found this was a little too bright for me, almost to the point of looking cartoonish. So I actually have a relatively big tub of Sienna Vallejo wash, I think it's called. And I went over all of my tiles with that, which probably wasn't the cheapest choice, but it was good. I'm really happy with the end result. They snap together in a super satisfying way. They don't line up perfect. That's on me for not measuring better at the beginning. But it is what it is, and I'm still really happy with them. In fact, I think it kind of adds to the rough look I was going for sort of inside a cave. Thank you for watching. I really hope you liked this video. If you want to give me a nice dopamine hit, please do like and subscribe. And if you prefer to see this written out long form, check out my blog at pibblepusher.ca for the written out version of this tutorial. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Happy crafting!